Am I the only one who has trouble having political conversations these days? I don't know what has happened to our country in the sense that we have so much trouble having a good discourse on political issues in our times without it descending into a heated argument and getting very personal oftentimes. Today I have some basic skills that I want to share with you about how we can have a discussion with people with whom we disagree. Am I the only one who needs help in this department? Okay, all right, there's a few people out there. Thanks to Mike Wessinger, who purchased this sermon topic at the auction a couple of years ago. And I'm finally getting around to delivering the sermon. So thank you, Mike. I also plan to clarify for him and for everyone here the fundamental relationship between religious liberalism and political conservatism. So if you're a boss, I want you to listen today for how you can be a boss that people look up to, not just kiss up to. If you're a son, a daughter, or a mother, or an uncle who has a political or religious difference in your family, listen for how your relationships can grow and deepen rather than growing apart and deepening the divide between you. If you're a coach, a teacher, or a Boy Scout leader, consider how these skills can help you be a better role model. And if you're a host for your family holiday meals, how this might improve your hospitality. Or if you're single and you're dating, try to imagine how this could impact your life and relationships. And if you happen to be in public service, and I know a number of you are, in this church we have a mayor, 2 judges, a member of the school board, an insurance commissioner, people on a number of city commissions, as well as folks currently running for state and county offices in the next couple of weeks. So if you're one of them, listen for how you can be a better public servant and a more effective politician. But first, let me clarify something about liberalism and conservatism. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes of teaching this morning, if that's okay. Many people were surprised last month when I explained that the original name of this church, founded in 1921, was All Souls Liberal Church. The founders thought that the word Unitarian in our name would be too controversial in Oklahoma in the 1920s. But apparently liberal was not. My, how things change. The reason is that at that time, liberalism had a very different meaning in America, and it was a prized American value. You see, it really wasn't until the Great Depression in the 1930s that American political liberalism was born. It was a response to the Depression, and it spawned the New Deal and other liberal political currents in American politics. So prior to the 1930s in America, liberalism referred back to the intellectual tradition of liberalism born in the 17th century through thinkers like John Locke. And this form of liberalism was the intellectual engine behind the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment was the father of both religious liberalism and American democracy. Liberalism, in this sense, undermined the notion of the divine right of kings. Our country was founded on liberalism, which conceived concepts like the rule of law rather than the authority of rulers. The idea that authority comes through the consent of the governed rather than the heredity of the monarchy or by divine dictate. The entire notion of fundamental individual rights to life, liberty, and property are born out of 17th century liberalism. Now, the Latin root of the word liberal is free. Liberal arts education has been considered a backbone of a thriving democracy. Among other things, it connotes freedom of inquiry and academic freedom. In the same way, liberal religion is free religion. It's religion that allows people the freedom to inquire about matters of faith and to question notions of authority that go back centuries and have been passed down. But religious liberalism and American democracy are both the products of the Enlightenment. So in 1921, in Tulsa and across America, liberal was still a well-regarded concept. It signified freedom, reason, and tolerance. And it questioned the old traditions of authority in government and religion and education and society. And conservatism, by definition, seeks to maintain tradition and traditional institutions. Conservatism comes from the Latin conservare, to preserve. If there must be change, conservatism prefers it to be minimal and gradual. And here's why this is so confusing today. The political roots of conservatism only go back to the early 19th century, after the French Revolution. That was the time when liberalism was in its peak, and heads were literally rolling in the streets of France. Political conservatism was born in that context as a force of moderation to check the extremes of liberalism, so as to maintain the health of a free society. That's the key point. Political conservatism was developed out of freedom to preserve freedom. So while religious conservatism is trying to preserve ancient structures of authority, American political conservatism is not trying to preserve old feudal forms of governmental authority. It is trying to serve democracy. In other words, American political conservatism and American political liberalism are both products of the Enlightenment and the tradition of freedom, reason, and tolerance. So both are attempts to strengthen freedom. Both are attempts to facilitate the maintenance of a liberal democracy. And so there's no contradiction between being religiously liberal and politically conservative. Both liberalism and conservatism play essential functions in the development of a healthy democracy. And that's why someone can be religiously liberal and support freedom in religion while also being politically conservative. There's no philosophical incongruence between being religiously liberal and politically conservative in America today. In fact, to do so is to uphold two different but equally important aspects of American freedom. The only reason that this has become confusing in our times is because the American Conservative Party, the Republican Party, has in the past few decades yoked itself to the religious right on certain social and moral issues. And without a doubt, this marriage of politics and religion has posed certain challenges for American religious liberals who are also politically conservative. But while the religious right would like their moral positions to be the central issues in conservatism, American political conservatism is about much more than those narrow concerns. Okay, I'm done teaching. I'm ready to start preaching. So how do we have a productive conversation with people who think and believe differently than we do? There are 4 ideas that I have to share, and you can remember them by the word prep. Prep as in prepare. Right? We prep before we take a test. We prep before we go into an interview. We prep before we cook or before we paint. Right? Prep. P-R-E-P. Persuade, respect, entertain, and pause.